you for joining me for this series. What a long, laborious trip it's been, right? Like, we should have a new piano demo up tomorrow, Adam's Family in honor of Halloween. So stay tuned for that. You can find it here on my TikTok. I haven't actually recorded it yet. I think, do it tomorrow when I get home from work. I don't know. If I get requests for it in my TikTok chat, I might try to demo it, like do a quick trial run, practice run on my live if I see any demand for it. Otherwise, I'll just use this as the penultimate episode of Cider House Rules because it's just not a fun read. Like, I think Irving just got too swept up, too carried away in dialogue and description. He had too many characters in the novel. And you can do a bunch of characters, but you gotta make it like Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, like Gimli, Legolas, Frodo, memorable characters, characters that are very important to the story. Not like Black Pan. Like, who even is Black Pan? Or Rose Rose, or Edward Pettigrew. It's like so many characters were introduced in this novel that just weren't overall important to the story. They were just regular characters. And just let us hold on to summer, man. It's too cold here. Man, and I like the heat. Like, why can I get a job in the heat? Closer to the Tropic of Cancer. That's what I'm all about. I just haven't been able to find it. A job there. That was weird. Got like the news up and it just like spontaneously closed, so I don't know why. Maybe I just clicked the button on accident. Okay, so 16 more pages outside house rules. Let's count it out. 16 plus 52 is 68, right? 568. John Urban. Here we go, buddy. Here we go. Here we go. Kicking us off today's Black Pan. Just a quick reminder, this is going to be, I think, the second to last episode. Tomorrow should be the final episode of Cider House Rules. And I'll have a special TikTok video dedicated Halloween tomorrow, Adam's Family, in honor of the holiday. I might need some more practice. Like what I was saying, I might be able to do a quick demo run here on the show if I get any requests for it in the comments. Otherwise, I'll just shoot to bring it to you all tomorrow. Just pipe down, like Pan said. He observed the bicycle lesson. How come with that? He asked. They trying hard, Muddy said, another random, irrelevant character. They invented a new sport, Peaches said, and everyone laughed. Show some respect, said Mr. Rose, and everyone piped down. Black Pan went inside the cider house. What you bet he burns the bread? Peaches asked quietly. Burns it. He took the time to kick your ass, Muddy told him. The bicycle was broken. Either the rear wheel wouldn't turn, or else the chain was jammed in the wheel. There's another bicycle, Angel told Rose Rose. You try that one while I fix this one. While he fixed Candy's bicycle, Rose Rose had to suffer with a boy's bicycle. So then, in addition to her troubles, she slipped and hurt her crotch against the crossbar. Homer was actually worried about how hard a fall she'd had. He asked her if she was all right. Just like a cramp, he called to him. She remained bent over until Angel managed to get the Candy's bicycle running again. Looks hopeless, Homer confided to Mr. Rose. What about them rules? Mr. Rose asked him. Homer put the candle in his pocket. He and Mr. Rose regarded each other. It was almost a contest, the way they looked at each other. I'm worried about your daughter, said Homer Wells after a while. Together they watched Rose fall off the bicycle again. Don't worry about her, said Mr. Rose. She looks unhappy sometimes, Homer said. She ain't unhappy, Mr. Rose said. Are you worried about her? Homer asked him. Once you start worrying, you can worry about anybody, can't you? Said Mr. Rose. It appeared to Homer Wells that her fall against the crossbar was still giving Rose some pain because she stood for a while with her hands on her knees and her head down, as if her stomach hurt her each time she fell off the bicycle. Homer and Mr. Rose missed the moment when she gave up. He just noticed that she was running off in the direction of the orchard called Frying Pan. Angel was running after her. Both bicycles were left behind. That's too bad, Homer said. They have a good time at the beach. Maybe I can convince them to let me drive them here. Drive them there. Leave them alone, said Mr. Rose. The way Homer heard it, it was more of a command than a suggestion. You don't have to go to no beach, Rose said more mildly. You're just young. Not sure how to have a good time, he said. Just think what might happen at the beach. I get drowned. Some people might not like seeing a white boy with a colored girl. They both in bathing suits. There they don't go nowhere, Mr. Rose concluded. That was the end of that subject, because then Mr. Rose asked, Are you happy, Homer? Am I happy? Said Homer Wells. Why do you repeat every single thing? Mr. Rose asked. It's like he has two lines, repeating and saying right. Right. I don't know, Homer said. I'm happy sometimes, he said cautiously. That's good, said Mr. Rose. And Mr. and Mrs. Worthington, are they happy? I think they're pretty happy most of the time. I believe he's referring to Candy and Wally. I might be wrong about that. Homer told him, I think they're pretty happy most of the time. That's good, said Mr. Rose. Peaches, who had a few beers, approached Angel's bicycle warily, as if the machine were dangerous, even when it was lying on the ground. Careful it don't bite you, Muddy warned. Peaches mounted the bike and grinned at the men. How do I start? He asked them. Nell laughed. But he got up from against the wall and went over to Candy's bicycle. Have you a race? He said to Peaches. Yeah, said Black Pan inside her house door. See which one of you falls down first. And ain't got no middle, Muddy observed Candy's bike. That make it go faster, Peaches said. He tried to move Angel's bike forward as if his feet were paddles. I ain't riding that thing, you fucking it, one of the men said, and everyone laughed. Black Pan ran up behind Peaches and started pushing him faster. Put that shit out, Peaches cried, but Black Pan got the bike rolling so fast that he couldn't keep up with it. I'm just glad something's finally happening in the boat. As my one lonely viewer leaves. It can't be no race if someone don't push me too, he said. Two of the men got him rolling faster than Peaches, who had disappeared over a hill into the next field, from which the men could hear him screaming. Holy shit, said Muddy when he was underway. It felt so hard that the front wheel rose off the ground, and then the bicycle rode right out from under him. The men were howling now. Black Pan picked up Muddy's fallen bicycle. He was next to try it. Gonna try it too? Mr. Rose asked Homer. As long as Angel and Candy weren't around to watch him, Homer thought he would. Sure, Homer said. I'm next, he yelled at Black Pan. He was balancing the bicycle in place, his feet slipping off the pedals. He fell over the side before he could get moving. That was no real turn, Black Pan said. I get another try. Are you going to try it? Homer asked Mr. Rose. Not me, said Mr. Rose. Baby's crying, someone said. Go pick her up, said someone else. I'll take care of that, said Mr. Rose to all of them. Watch the baby, you all play. He just appeared over the hill. He was walking the bicycle beside him. He was limping. Hit a tree, he explained, and went right at the tree like the tree was its enemy. You're supposed to steer it, Muddy told him. Steer itself, Peaches said, and it don't listen to me. Homer supported Black Pan while the cook mounted Candy's bike a second time. Here we go, Black Pan said with determination. He kept one arm wrapped around Homer's neck. He had only one hand on the handlebars, and he wasn't pedaling. You got to pedal it to make it go, Homer told him. You got to push me first, Black Pants said. Something burning, someone shouted. Hit my cornbread, Black Pants said. He lunged to one side, his arm still around Homer's neck, so that Homer fell over with him on top of the bicycle. Told you he was going to burn that bread, Peaches told Muddy. Give me that bike, Muddy said, taking Angel's bike away from Peaches. The men were giving Homer a push. I got it, Homer told them, so they let go. He didn't have it. He veered sharply in one direction, then he veered back toward the men, who had run out of his way. Then he jackknifed the bike and went tumbling one way. The bike went another. Everyone was laughing now. Peaches looked at Homer Wells lying on the ground. Sometimes it don't help if you white. Peaches told Homer and everyone howled. Help if you white most of the time, said Mr. Rose. He stood in the cider house door, the smoke from the burning cornbread billowing behind him. His daughter's daughter in his arms, the pacifier seeming permanent fixture in her mouth. After Mr. Rose had spoken, he stuck a pacifier in his mouth too. I feel like as time goes on, like the race card is more and more of a cop out. Basically, like it's getting harder and harder for people to just write it off as race. Oh, he got his position because he's white. Oh, he got it because he's black. Like, I think people see more today past color than ever before, I think. I mean, I do think there is still racism in the world, but it's not. I think today it's much fewer and far between. The heart of the valley that was at the bottom of a frying pan, where the ocean might be 100 miles away, no breath from the sea ever reached. Rose was stretched out in the dark grass under a northern spy that no one had picked yet. Angel Wells was stretched out beside her. Let her arm fall on his waist. He ran his finger very lightly over her face, following the line of her scar down her nose to her lip. He got to her lip. She held his hand still and kissed his finger. She'd taken off the work shoes and the blue jeans, but she kept Candy's bathing suit and the t-shirt on. We've had no fun at no beach anyway, she said. We'll go another day, Angel said. We won't go nowhere, she said. They kissed each other for a while. Then Rose said, Tell me about it again. Angel Wells began to describe the ocean, but she interrupted him. No, not that part, she said. I don't care about no ocean. Tell me about the other part, where we all living together in the same house. You and me and my baby, and your father and Mr. and Mrs. Worthington, Rose said. That's the part that get to me, she said, smiling. He began again about how it was possible. He was sure that his father and Wally and Candy wouldn't object. You all crazy, she told Angel. Go on, she said. It's a bunch of characters. There's plenty of room, Angel assured her. Ain't nobody gonna mind about the baby? She asked him. She shut her eyes. With her eyes shut, she could see that Angel was describing a little better. That was when Angel Wells became a fiction writer, whether he knew it or not. That's when he learned how to make the make-believe matter to him more than the real life mattered to him. That's when he learned how to paint a picture that was not real and never would be real. But in order to be believed at all, even on a sunny Indian summer day, it had to be better made and seem more real than real. It had to at least sound possible. Angel talked all day. He just went on and on. He'd be a novelist before nightfall. In his story, Rose and everyone else got along famously. No one objected to anything anyone else did. All of it, as they say in Maine, worked out. Sometimes Rose cried a little. More often, they just kissed. A few times did she interrupt him, usually because she wanted him to repeat something that had seemed especially unlikely to her. Hold on a minute, she'd say to Angel. Better go over that again, because I must be slow. In late afternoon, the mosquitoes began to bother them, and it crossed Angel's mind how, some evening, Rose had asked Wally to tell her that the rice paddy mosquitoes were alike. No, she viewed mosquitoes as anything compared to a Japanese bee mosquito, Wally would have told her, but Angel didn't get to tell Rose that part of the fantasy. She was starting to stand up when an apparent cramp or the pain from her fall against the bicycle's crossbar dropped her to her knees as if she'd been kicked. Angel caught her around her shoulders. I think this novel could have just focused entirely on St. Clouds. Like as soon as it introduced Candy, it was like going off the rails, like too big in scope. You hurt yourself on the bicycle, didn't you? He asked her. I was trying to, she said then. What? He asked her. I was trying to hurt myself, Rose told him. But I don't think I hurt myself enough. Enough for what? He asked. Who's the baby? She told him. You're pregnant? Angel asked her. Again, she said. Again and again, I guess, she said. Somebody must want me to keep having babies. I think that's a recurring theme in this novel too. Dumb people having kids. Like, see, if you open your legs, sometimes it results in pregnancy. Like, we know it's not storks. Okay, we know it's not anything but monkey business. Okay, nothing but monkey business. That's all it is. Sadly, you do not need a 200 IQ to procreate. Ooh, and you asked her. Never mind, she told him. Somebody's not here, she asked. He asked. Oh, he here, Rose said, but never mind. The father is here? Angel asked. The father of this one, yeah, he here, she said, patting her flat stomach. Who is he? Angel asked. Never mind who he is, she told Angel. Tell me that part again, only better make it two babies. Now they mean you and everybody else, and two babies, she said. Won't we all have fun? Angel looked as if she slapped him. Rose kissed him and hugged him, and she changed her tone of voice. You see, she whispered to him, holding him tight. You wouldn't have had no fun at no beach, Angel. Do you want the baby? He asked her. The one I got, she told him. I don't want this other one. She struck herself as hard as she could. When she said other, she bent herself over again. She knocked the wind out of herself. She lay in the grass when Angel would not help observing was a fetal position. You want to love me or help me? She asked him. Both, he said miserably. Ain't no such thing as both, she said. If you're smart, you'd stick with helping me. That easier. You can stay with me, Angel began again. Don't tell me no more about that, Rose said eagerly. Don't tell me no more about names for my baby either. Just plain help me, she said. How? Angel asked. Anything, he told her. Just give me an abortion, Rose said. I don't live around here. I don't know nobody to ask. I got no money. It's called abstinence. Master it. Angel thought that the money he'd been saving to buy his first car would probably be enough money for an abortion. Saved about $500. Problem was that the money was in a savings account, the trustees of which were his father and Candy. Angel couldn't take any money out without their signatures. When Angel called Herb Fowler at home, the news regarding the abortionist was typically vague. There's some old fart named Hood who does them. Herb told Angel. He's a retired doctor from Cape Kenneth. He does the business in his summer house over on Drinkwater. Lucky for you, it's almost still summer. I heard he does them in the summer house even if it's in the middle of winter. Do you know what it costs? Angel asked Herb. A lot, Herb said. Don't cost as much as a baby. Thanks, Herb, Angel said. Congratulations, Herb Fowler told the boy. I didn't know your pecker was long enough. It's long enough, Angel said bravely. When Angel looked in the phone book, there was no Dr. Hood among the many Hoods in that part of Maine. Fowler didn't know the man's first name. Angel knew he couldn't call everyone named Hood and ask each time if this was the abortionist. Angel knew he'd have to speak to Candy and his father in order to get the money, so he didn't delay in telling them the whole story. God, what a good boy Angel is, Wally would say later. He never tries to keep anything from anybody. He just comes right out with it, no matter what it is. She wouldn't tell you who the father is? Hummerwell asked Angel. No, she wouldn't. Listen, kind of a... I don't want to say it was Mr. Rose. I'm like... There's none of that going on, like incest. You can go like that, like... Maybe Muddy, Wally said. Probably Peaches, Candy said. What does it matter if she doesn't want to say who the father is? The main thing is she doesn't want the baby, said Humphrey Wells. The main thing is to get her an abortion. Molly and Candy were quiet. They wouldn't question Homer's authority on the subject. Yeah, around these parts, people don't need abortions. I'll just say that much. People come, they see I'm not a beautiful woman, and then they just dip. They're like, oh, it's not Bianca. It's not Sabrina Carpenter, and they just go. Like, whatever, dude. If you're just window shopping, get out of here, man. This is the home of heavy ideas, okay? Not just pretty faces, okay? Deep thoughts. That's what goes on this show. Okay. We ain't got time for those beauty pageants. We're here trying to change the world with knowledge, ideas, big facts. That's Stormer for you. That's why I'm in teaching and not some kind of reformer. Anyway, the problem is, how do we know which hood to call? The phone book doesn't say which one's the doctor. I know which one it is, Homer said, and he's not a doctor. Homer said he was a retired doctor, Angel said. He's a retired biology teacher, said Homer Wells, who knew exactly which Mr. Hood it was. Homer also remembered that Mr. Hood once confused a rabbit's uteri with a sheep's. He wondered how many uteri Mr. Hood imagined women had. He'd be more careful if he knew a woman had only one. A biology teacher? Angel asked. Not a very good one either, Homer said. Poor feller has never known shit about anything, Wally said. I mean, he did know something about beating his wife, right? Let's give him some credit. The thought of what Mr. Hood might not know gave Homer Wells the shivers. She's not going anywhere near Mr. Hood, Homer said. You'll have to take her to St. Cloud's. And again, characters. I have no idea who Mr. Hood is. At all. Like, Peaches, Muddy, I have no idea who any of these characters are. It's just like a character salad. Like, he just throws a bunch of characters at you. You'll have to take her to St. Cloud's, he told Angel. And I think by this point in the story, Larch is also dead. Correct me if I'm wrong. The one character that really mattered, other than Homer. I don't think she wants to have the baby, Angel said. If she had it, I don't think she'd want to leave it in the orphanage. Angel, Homer said, doesn't have to have a baby in St. Cloud's. She can have an abortion there. While he moved the wheelchair back and forth, Candy said, I have an abortion there once, Angel. You did? Angel said. Time, Wally told the boy. We thought we'd always be able to have another baby. It was before Wally was hurt, before the war, Candy began. It's like, dude, people were having abortions like they were giving out candy. Like people just got pregnant, they have abortions. It ain't no thing, man. Ain't no thing. Dr. Larch does it. He lost his father. Right. It's another one else. Thinking, okay, so Larch is still alive. He's thinking that he should put Angel and Rose on a train to St. Cloud's as soon as possible with all the evidence that had been submitted to the Board of Trustees. We didn't know how much more time Dr. Larch would have to practice. I'll call Dr. Larch right now, Homer said. We'll put you and Rose on the next train. Or I could drive them in the Cadillac, Wally said. Too far for you to drive, Wally, Homer told him. Baby Rose can't stay here with me, Candy said. They decided that it would be best if Candy went to the Cider house and brought Rose and her baby back to the house. Mr. Rose might give Rose an argument if Angel showed up at night, wanting Rose and the baby to go off with him. Don't argue with me, Candy said. I'll just say I found a lot of old baby clothes and that Rose and I are going to dress up the baby in everything that fits her. At night? Wally said. For Christ's sake, Mr. Rose isn't a fool. I don't care if he believes me, Candy said. I just want to get the girl and her baby out of there. I believe there's talk that Mr. Rose is abusive to his daughter. Kuttner, I don't know what the validity is of those claims. Is there that much of a rush? Wally asked. Afraid there is, said Homer Wells. He had not told Candy or Wally about Dr. Larch's desire to replace himself. What revelations and fictions have been delivered to the board? An orphan learns to keep things to himself. The orphan holds things in. Comes out of orphans, comes out of them slowly. Homer called St. Cloud's. He got Nurse Caroline in their shock. Their grief and their mourning for Dr. Larch, they determined that Nurse Caroline had the sturdiest voice over the phone. They'd all been trying to familiarize themselves with Dr. Larch's plans for everything, with his massive but brief history of St. Cloud's as well. Every time the phone rang, they assumed it was someone from the Board of Trustees. Carolyn? Said Homer Wells. It's Homer. Can you speak with the old man? Nurse Angela and Nurse Edna and even Mrs. Grogan would love Homer Wells forever, in spite of its note of denial. Nurse Caroline was younger than any of them. She did not feel the biting sweetness of Homer Wells that comes from knowing someone when he's a baby. Well, he had betrayed Larch, and of course it was a bad time for him to ask for the old man. When Larch had died, Nurse Angela, Nurse Edna, and Mrs. Grogan said they were not up to calling Homer. Nurse Caroline hadn't wanted to call him. What do you want? Nurse Caroline asked him coldly. You changed your mind? There's a friend of my son. There's a friend of my son's. Something else. She's one of the migrants here. She's already got a baby who's got no father, and now she's going to have another. And she left too. Caroline informed him. Carolyn, said Elmer Wells. What the shit? I want to talk to the old man. I'd like to talk to him too, Nurse Caroline told him. Her voice rising. March is dead, Elmer, she said quietly. But the shit, said Elmer Wells. He felt his heart dancing. Too much ether, she said. There's no more. Lord's work in St. Cloud's. You know, someone who needs it, you'll have to do it yourself. I mean, I never put too much stock in that. Like, God's work, Lord's work. I mean, if you stretch your imagination far enough, you could say anything technically is God's work. Anything is the Lord's work. You could say God acts through the actions of people. I don't really believe in that. I think people do what people do. And there's no know about it. Like, and moreover, if there was a God, like, why are these people getting pregnant in the first place? Why is it the Lord's work to dispatch unborn babies? I don't know. In this book, it is. And she hung up on him. She really slammed the phone down. His ear rang. He heard the sound of the logs bashing together in the water that swept the winkles away. His eyes had not stung so sharply since the night in the draper's furnace room in Waterville, and he dressed himself for his getaway. His throat had not ached so deeply, the pain pushing down into his lungs. Since that night, he had yelled across the river, trying to make the Maine woods repeat the name of Fuzzy Stone. And really, on my more cynical side, I'm like, if you can't get an abortion, don't do it. And don't do it. Or use birth control. Figure some other way. Because as far as I'm concerned, on a certain level, abortion is just poor planning. That's it. People who rushed in and they didn't think of the consequences. Maybe I'm a cold-hearted cynic that way. Maybe I'll be less cynical if I had more luck in romance and love. Maybe if I had more girlfriends and more wives, whatever, more mistresses, I would be more open-minded. But yeah, it's the life I live. It creates my frame of reference, my point of view. Snowy Meadows had found happiness with the furniture marshes. Good for Snowy, thought Homer Wells. He imagined that the other orphans would have difficulty finding happiness in the furniture business. At times, he admitted he had been very happy in the apple business. He knew what Arch would have told him. His happiness was not the point, that it wasn't as important as his usefulness. Homer shut his eyes and watched the women getting off the train. They always looked a little lost. He remembered them in the gaslight sleigh. Faces were especially vivid to him when the sled runners would cut through the snow, start sparks against the ground. The women had winced at the grating sound. Briefly, when the town had cared enough to provide a bus service, how isolated the women had seemed in the sealed buses. Their faces cloudy behind the fogged glass. Through the windows, it appeared to Homer Wells the way the world appeared to them before the ether transported them. Now they walked from the station, or saw them marching uphill. There were more of them than he remembered. There were an army advancing on the orphanage hospital, bearing them with a single sound. I'm sorry, bearing with them a single wound. Sorry. Let's see. I mean, I could see it, but I couldn't. Nurse Carolyn was tough. Where would Nurse Edna and Nurse Angela go, and what would happen to Mrs. Grogan? Homer Wells, he remembered the hatred and contempt in Millie's eyes. Melanie were pregnant, I would help her, he thought. With that thought, he realized that he was willing to play God a little. Overlarge would have told him there was no such thing as playing a little God when you were willing to play God at all. You played a lot. Wells was thinking hard when he reached into his pocket and found the burned down nub of the candle Mr. Rose had returned to him. That against the rules, ain't it? Mr. Rose asked him. All right, based on the actions of these characters, I don't think anything is against the rules. His bedside table between the reading lamp. Telephone was his battered copy of David Copperfield. We didn't have to open the book to know how the story began. Whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life, or whether that station will be held by anybody else, these pages must show, he recited from memory. I mean, who are we if not the main character, right? His memory was exceedingly keen. He could recall the different sizes of the ether cones that Larch insisted upon making himself. The apparatus was rudimentary. Larch shaped a cone out of an ordinary bag towel. Between the layers of the towel were layers of stiff paper to keep the cone from collapsing. The open tip of the cone was a wad of cotton. It absorbed the ether. Crude, but Larch could make one in 3 minutes. There were different sizes for different faces. Homer had preferred the ready-made Yankauer mask, a wire mesh mask shaped like a soup ladle, wrapped with 10 or 12 layers of gauze. It was into the old Yankauer mask on his bedside table that Homer deposited the remains of Cider House candle. He kept changing the mask, sometimes his watch. Now he peered into it. The mask contained a piece of chewing gum in a faded green wrapper, and the tortoiseshell button from his tweed jacket. Gauze in the mask was yellow and dusty, but all the mask needed was a fresh gauze. Homer Wells made up his mind. He would be a hero. Went downstairs to the kitchen where Angel was pushing Wally around in the wheelchair. It was a game they played when they were both restless. Angel stood on the back of the wheelchair and pushed it the way he pushed a scooter. He got the chair going faster and faster, much faster than Wally could make it move by himself. Wally just steered. He kept turning and turning. He kept trying to miss the furniture. Despite his skill as a pilot and the good size of the kitchen floor, eventually Angel would get the chair going too fast to control and they'd crash into something. Candy got angry at them for it, but they did it anyway, especially when she was out of the house. Wally called it flying most of all. It was something they did when they were bored. Candy had gone to the Cider House to get Rose and her baby. Angel and Wally were freewheeling. They saw how Homer looked. They stopped. What's the matter, old boy? Wally asked his friend. Homer knelt by Wally's wheelchair and put his head in Wally's lap. Dr. Larch is dead, he told Homer while he cried. For a very short time, in Homer's memory, Billy Day had been the only orphan who ever cried for a long time. Homer stopped crying. He said to Angel, I've got a little story for you. I'm going to need your help. They went outside of the shed where the garden things were kept. Homer opened one of the quarter-pound ether cans with a safety pin. Fumes made his eyes tear a little. Never understood how Larch would like this stuff. He got addicted to it, Homer told his son, but he used to have the lightest touch. I've seen patients talking back to him while they were under. They still didn't feel a thing. He took the ether upstairs, and Homer told Angel to make up the extra bed in his room. First with the rubber sheet they used when Angel had still been in diapers, and the usual sheets, but clean ones over that. For baby Rose? Angel asked his father. No, not for baby Rose, Homer said. When he unpacked the instruments, Angel sat down on the other bed and watched him. The water's boiling, Wally called upstairs. Remember how I used to tell you that I was Dr. Larch's helper? Homer asked Angel. Right, said Angel Wells. Well, I got very good helping him, Homer said. Very good. I'm not an amateur. Well, son, that's really it. That's the little story, Homer said. And he'd arrange everything he needed where you could see it. Everything looked timeless. Everything looked perfect. Go on, Angel Wells told his father. Go on with the story. Downstairs in the quiet house, they heard Wally in the wheelchair, rolling from room to room. He was still flying. Upstairs, Homer Wells was talking to his son while he changed the gauze on the Ankara mask. He began with that old business about the Lord's work and the devil's, how to Wilbur Larch it was all the work of the Lord. It startled Candy. How the headlights from her Jeep caught all the men in the starkest silhouettes against the sky. They were perched in a row like huge birds along the Cider House roof. She thought that everyone must be up there, but not everyone was. Rose and his daughter were inside the Cider House, and the men were waiting where they'd been told to wait. Andy got out of the Jeep. No one spoke to her. There were no lights in the Cider House. If her headlights hadn't exposed the men on the roof, Andy would have thought that everyone had gone to bed. Hello, Candy called up on the roof. One day, that whole roof is going to cave in. Suddenly frightened her how they wouldn't speak to her. The men were more frightened than Candy was. They didn't know what to say. They knew only that what Mr. Rose was doing to his daughter was wrong. They were too afraid to do anything about it. Muddy? Candy asked in the darkness. Yes, Mrs. Worthington, Muddy called down to her. Went over to the corner of the cider house where the roof dipped closest to the ground. It was where everyone climbed up. An old picking ladder was leaning up against the roof there. No one on the roof moved to hold the ladder steady for her. Peaches? Candy said. Yes, ma'am, Peaches said. Please, someone hold the ladder, she said. Buddy and Peaches held the ladder, and Black Pan held her hand, and she climbed up on the roof. Men made room for her, and she sat down with them. She could not see very clearly, but she would have known if Rose was there. If Mr. Rose had been there, Candy knew he would have spoken to her. Each time she heard the sound from the cider house, it came from directly under her. Candy thought it was the baby, just babbling or maybe beginning to cry. And your Wally was a boy, he was different. Oh, here, Black Pan said to her. It looked like another country then. His gaze was fixed upon the twinkling coast. The noise under the cider house roof grew more distinct. She said, "Ain't it a pretty night, ma'am?" Decidedly not a pretty night. It was a darker night than usual. Sound from the cider house was now incomprehensible to her. For a second, she thought she was going to be sick. Careful when you stand up, Mrs. Worthington. Buddy said to her, but Candy stamped her feet on the roof. Just hold on, folks, hold on. We got 3 more pages. We're almost there. And then, yeah, tomorrow should be the final episode. Cider House Rules. Or like Cider House Drools, am I right? She knelt down and began to beat on the tin with both her hands. "To hold the roof," Mrs. Worthington Black Pan said to her. "You best be careful you don't fall through it." "Get me down, get me off," Candy said to them. Honey and Peaches took her arms and Black Pan preceded them to the ladder. Even walking down the roof, Candy tried to keep stamping her feet. Going down the ladder, she called Rose. She could not say the ridiculous name of Rose, and she couldn't make herself say Mr. Rose either. Rose, she called ambiguously. She wasn't even sure which one she was summoning. It was Mr. Rose who met her at the cider house door. Still getting dressed, he was tucking his shirt in and buttoning his trousers. He looked thinner and older to her than he looked before. Although he smiled at her, he didn't look into her eyes with his usual confidence, his usual polite indifference. "Don't you speak to me," Candy told him, but what would he have said? "Your daughter and her baby are coming with me." Candy walked by him into the cider house. She felt the tattered rules with her fingers. She found the light. Rose was sitting up on the bed. She pulled her blue jeans on, but she hadn't closed them. She pulled a t-shirt on, but she held Candy's bathing suit in her lap. She was unfamiliar with wearing it. She'd not been able to put it on in a hurry. She'd found only one of her work shoes, which she held in one hand. The other one was under the bed. Candy found it and put it on the correct foot. Rose wore no socks. Then Candy tied the laces for her, too. Rose just sat on the bed while Candy put on and tied her other shoe. "You're coming with me, your baby, too," Candy told the girl. "Yes, ma'am," Rose said. Candy took the bathing suit from her and used the suit to wipe the tears from Rose's face. "You're fine, you're just fine," Candy said to the girl, "and you're going to feel better. No one's going to hurt you." Baby Rose was sound asleep, and he was careful not to wake her when she picked her up and gave her to her mother. Rose moved uncertainly. Candy put her arm around her when they walked out of the cider house together. Reminds me of a cigarette song. "No one's gonna hurt you, baby. Long as you're with me, you'll be just fine." I actually went to see them in the Bay, Northern California. Saw them live. "You're gonna be just fine," Candy said to Rose. Didn't I say? She kissed the young woman on her neck, and Rose, who was sweating, leaned against her. Mr. Rose, standing in the darkness between the Jeep and the cider house, but the rest of the men still sat on the roof. "You coming back," Mr. Rose said. Nothing was raised at the end of his voice. It was not a question. "I told you not to speak to me," Candy told him. She held Rose and her baby into the Jeep. "I was speaking to my daughter," Mr. Rose said with dignity. Rose would not answer her father. She sat like a statue of a woman with a baby in her arms while Candy turned the Jeep around and drove away. Before they went to the fancy house together, Rose slumped against Candy and said to her, "I never could do nothing about it." "Of course you couldn't," Candy told her. "You hated the father of the other one," Rose said. "He's been after me ever since." There's just something in this book about like family divisions too. People who don't want their kids, people who don't like their fathers, People with like broken families, like Melanie, and I would argue even Wally. Like Wally is not Angel's father, so there's just something there about like separate separate lives, families drifting apart, family bonds being broken. You're gonna be all right now, Candy told the girl before they went inside. Through the windows, they could watch Wally flying back and forth in the house. No, my father, Mrs. Worthington, Rose whispered. Don't want me back. He can't have you, Candy told her. He can't make you go back to him. He make his own rules, said Rose. Father of your beautiful daughter? Candy asked, holding the door open for Rose and her baby girl. Where's he? Yeah, another deadbeat dad. Father cut him up. He long gone, Rose said. He don't want to be involved with me no more. And your mother? Candy asked as they went in the house. She dead, Rose said. That was when Wally told Candy that Dr. Larch was dead, too. She would not have known it. Look at Homer. He was all business. An orphan learns how to hold back, how to keep things in. Are you all right? Candy asked Homer while Wally wheeled back, Baby Rose downstairs in the house. Mm-hmm. And Angel took Rose to his room, which was prepared for her. I'm a little nervous, Homer admitted to Candy. Certainly not a matter of technique. I've got everything I need. I know I can do it. Just that to me, it's a living human being. I can't describe to you what it feels like, just to hold a curette, for example. When living tissue is touched, it responds. Somehow. Or said, but Candy cut him off. It may help you to know who the father is, she said. It's Mr. Rose. Her father is the father. It makes it easier. Did I not foresee that? Dude, I'm telling you, my prediction is scary good sometimes. Like, good gosh. I can like see exactly what the author is thinking. Sometimes before they even say it. The crisply made up bed in Angel's childhood room and the gleaming instruments, which were displayed so neatly on the adjacent bed, made Rose more talkative and rigid. This don't look like no fun, the girl said, holding her fist in her lap. I took the other one out through the top, the way she was supposed to come out, Rose explained. She had a cesarean, Homer Wells could see, perhaps because of her age and her size at the time. Homer could not quite convince her that this time everything would be easier. He wouldn't need to take anything out through the top. Go stay with Wally, Angel. Okay, oh boy, go give Baby Rose a ride in the wheelchair. Knock over all the furniture if you want, she told him, kissing her son. Oh, wait, Rose told Angel. Don't be afraid, Candy told Rose. Homer knows what he's doing. You're in very safe hands. She swabbed Rose with the red merthiolate. Homer began to show Rose the instruments. This is the speculum, he said to her. It may feel cold, but it doesn't hurt. You won't feel any of this. He assured her. These are dilators, Homer said. Rose shut her eyes. Done this before, ain't you? Rose asked him. He had the ether ready. Just breathe normally, he told her. First whiff, she opened her eyes and turned the face away from the mask. And he put her hands at Rose's temples and very gently moved her head into the right position. First smells the sharpest, said Homer Wells. He said, have you done this before? Rose asked him. Her voice was muffled under the mask. I'm a good doctor, I really am, Homer Wells told her. Just relax and breathe normally. You gotta like how Homer does not answer the question. Because he, of course, has not performed an abortion. He has been morally against it this whole time. And I think he is bending his own rules. He's breaking his own rules to do what he considers to be the right thing. Because it's a case of incest, and I think he's making an exception based on that. It's just kind of interesting, right? I'm wrapping up today's episode. I think tomorrow will be the final episode. How people think about themselves and the overall concept of morality. Morality in this case, Homer is staunchly against abortion. He thinks it's the taking of life, but he agrees to do it in the case of Rose, who is knocked up by her father, which is some scuff business. And of course, Dr. Larch's absence could be, what's the word? Dr. Larch's absence could be motivating that as well. It could be contributing to that decision. Because Larch is absent, there's essentially no one left at St. Cloud's who can perform abortions. Maybe one of the nurses could, given how often they've been working with Dr. Larch over the years. Okay, but that should do it for today. Please remember to like, comment, follow, donate. That was Drummer Show. If you're on TikTok, like, comment, share, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, thank you in advance for any and all support that the show should receive. Sleep tight. Have a good night. I've been your host, Drummer Show. Signing out, signing off. Thanks for watching.